and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys for another episode of the Arsenal News Show. The funny thing is, I started the video and I pressed the button to start the intro, and I left my laptop on full volumes. I think the whole street has just woken up. Anyway, good morning. I hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. Very much appreciated you for joining me so early, as it always is. Good morning to those joining us live in the chat box. Johnny, Anko, Stephen Harrison, Jose, Stephen, Amira, MJ10, Carl, Kaiser, Sessan, Lynn, Gunnar Jake, Dabani. We've got Louis, Granddaddy Gunnar, Paul, Stevie, Lynn, and plenty more too. So thank you, everybody, indeed, for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Let's jump into the stories that we've got to discuss today. But please make sure, if you haven't done so already, to just press that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're new. De Bruyne last night, making it very, very interesting indeed in the Champions League semi-finals. Of course, tonight we see the two Milan clubs face off, but a 1-1 draw in the Bernabeu yesterday evening. Two fantastic goals, you have to say. I mean, first of all, Vinicius Jr. working with Camavinga, who I thought, Arsenal were linked with Camavinga in January, and I didn't expect it ever to happen. But if Arsenal were able to get their hands on a player like that for the midfield, that is an exciting prospect indeed, whether it's Camavinga or somebody else. But the finish from Vinicius Jr. was absolutely brilliant. And I thought, wow, that's going to take some beating. And then it arguably was. Kevin De Bruyne scoring an amazing strike. I think what the game did is I think it taught actually a lot of us what needs to happen for you to, in a way, kind of contain it to as much as you can Manchester City. I thought there were really large periods of the game where Real Madrid were dominant and looking dangerous and were very direct in their approach. And I think that that's probably the best way that you've got in terms of beating and having a chance of beating Man City. Obviously, you want to hit them on the break sometimes, but if you're a good enough team, as I believe Arsenal to be, we're going to get into positions, hopefully in seasons to come, where we are good enough to have plenty of the ball in these games. And I thought Real Madrid were a deserving winner on the night and were unfortunate not to come out with a lead going into Manchester. But what this does, obviously, is it creates a scenario where Man City have to go to Everton at the weekend, and that is not an easy game from the looks of things after Brighton found out in their own fixture. And you'd think they'd have to make some changes, maybe rest a few players ahead of the game against Real Madrid. They can afford to. They've got this gap at the top of the table that they can keep. They've got that game in hand as well. So who knows? Maybe the game has opened up the possibilities for some hope in that Everton game. But yes, I did a piece this morning actually ranking the difficulty of all of Manchester City's remaining games. It is interesting that they've got 4 games and 3 of them are all away from home. They've only got the 1 home game left this season, and that's against Chelsea. Man City's home record is brilliant. Their away record is where they've dropped points. You think about Liverpool, Manchester United. You think about other games, Nottingham Forest, for instance, where they have Aston Villa, where they've dropped points. It's been away from home. Their away form has not been as good as Arsenal's, let's say. So maybe that's where we've got that little bit of hope. And fingers crossed, maybe that's something we can hang our hat on for the forthcoming games. Now, going more specifically on to Arsenal, Granit Xhaka's potential exits to Bayer Leverkusen. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. I did a piece reacting to kind of this where I discussed the whole idea of making sure that we reinforce the squad rather than replacing individuals in the squad. We had a few discussions in the comment sections as well from yesterday's video. If you've got thoughts on this topic, do not be shy to leave your comments down below on what you think about a potential Granit Xhaka exit is to you. I agree with the point of view that I think that it's better to keep him for the moment. I think if we want to emulate the likes of Manchester City, it makes sense to keep him and then reinforce, because if you look at what happened when Man City signed Rodri, they had Fernandinho, they kept Fernandinho for a season or two and then eventually let him go. And I think having that transition, that turnover period is important. And I think that Arsenal maybe need to follow that same rhetoric when it comes down to managing Granit Xhaka's future. It seems a lot of the noise regarding his willingness to move to Germany is coming from Germany more than it is from the English side of things. I can't say to you that I've heard anything to suggest that Xhaka has a willingness to leave or that Arsenal would be willing to let him go unless it was for the right price. if there's a very good offer that comes in, it's difficult to turn that down for a player whose market value is difficult to kind of summarize at this moment in time, because it's really tricky to understand how much he would be worth in the market. And because a year or two left on his deal, 30 plus. Arsenal are looking to try and bring in reinforcements. He's going to move further down the pecking order. So it's difficult to understand, what an actual market value for Xhaka might be. So it'll be interesting to see what dictates that value and how that value comes forward with any potential bids for the player in the summer. Xhaka's always said that he wanted to achieve something special with Arsenal, whether that's qualifying for the Champions League with a title race. I don't know if that considers completing that ambition for him. I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens in the summer. Now, Aaron Ramsdale is set to sign a brand new contract, it seems, with Arsenal. Reported by The Times yesterday that Arsenal have been in discussions with Ramsdale, and there's a confidence that a deal will be done. I know this is the case. I'm expecting something to be announced on this very soon. So hopefully you guys can get some positive news becoming public about Aaron Ramsdale signing a brand new deal. So good news on this front. I think everyone agrees that Aaron Ramsdale deserves a brand new contract, and that I think that his future is very much with Arsenal. That may come across slightly contradictory to what I said when I was speaking on Sophie's channel the other day, but I think I've provided context to that conversation now, certainly. And, if Arsenal want to be ruthless in the market and be a team that are going to be competing at the top of the table, if you can find upgrades on players, absolutely go and do it. But at this moment in time, it's going to be very difficult to do that on Aaron Ramsdale, who is proving to be an absolutely brilliant goalkeeper. I can't believe, by the way, I saw suggestions, I think, on Twitter yesterday saying that the Fabian Schär save was not like that wildly crazy. Honestly, some people just don't want to be happy. I think it was a brilliant save. We just got to be, maybe it's people's desire to be different and put out different views, but that save was unbelievably good. Very, very, very happy to see Ramsdale say at the club for the foreseeable future. Potential incomings to discuss. Fabrizio Romano, talking on court offside, suggests that Arsenal are amongst the clubs that will, of course, be ready to pounce on Southampton's star midfielder Romeo Lavia. The buyback clause that Manchester City have in his deal is not set to actually activate until 2024, meaning that if a club can move for him in this specific summer transfer window, that would make it much easier. Man City would not have as much of a say, if any, in any potential deal. And with Southampton going down, pretty much guaranteed at this point, it does give me hope that, a side like Arsenal would have much more chance of getting Lavia for a reasonable figure as well if they were to move for him. Fantastic talent, great player, certainly would be open to seeing him join Arsenal in the summer transfer window, amongst other central midfield options like Declan Rice, for example, who we'll talk about shortly. Now, David Ornstein has cleared up a slight confusion regarding Moises Caicedo. Yesterday, the well-travelled, well-connected and very reliable journalist at The Athletic reported that Mac Allister's contract contains certain clauses that would make it simpler or potentially easier to manoeuvre a move away from the club, but that Brighton do still possess plenty of control in the say of where Mac Allister would go. Now, a slight typo, I think, in the original tweet led many to believe that this was also the case for Moises Caicedo. That's not. The article clears that up when you read it in full, and certainly at the bottom of the piece where it mentions Caicedo, it just highlights and alludes to the fact that Caicedo could also move on in the summer, but not specifically for any kind of contractual clause making it easier for that to happen. That is purely the case, it seems to be, for just Alexis Mac Allister, and that if any club was to come in to try and sign Caicedo, they would have to do it by finding an agreement financially with Brighton to make a deal happen, just like with most deals as well. So, yes, unfortunately, no clause in Caicedo's contract to help Arsenal sign him. That is purely in Mac Allister's contract, and it's not a buyout clause. It's a very different, more technical agreement that needs to be made between the two clubs and the player's entourage and the player himself. But hopefully Arsenal move for someone like Caicedo or potentially Mac Allister. Both are very talented players. For me, I prefer Caicedo. I think he'd be a great addition to the Arsenal squad, but I hope that clears up any confusion or enlightens you to what the reality of the situation is regarding Caicedo. And our headline story of the day is that Jude Bellingham's transfer this summer, which looks to be nearing a conclusion to Real Madrid and will be costing Los Blancos well upwards of £100 million, is the key motivational factor in West Ham United also demanding a 100 million plus deal for Rice. We talked about this a couple of days ago in the fact that Rice would be demanding a figure potentially as high as 120 million pounds, according to Sky Sports, who suggest that West Ham will be looking for that amount of money from a Champions League qualified club. I have said that I don't think that it will be this much money for Rice. I just think that's far, far too much for Arsenal to contemplate moving for the player. And if you can get Caicedo between 70 and 80, and if Rice is only going to go for 120, I think you have to look to try and sign Caicedo instead of Declan Rice, because it is just, it's too high of a fee. If it happens, I'll be shocked and, obviously pleased that Arsenal have signed Rice. It would put significant pressure on Arsenal and Rice in particular to have that deal succeed in a very big way. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. But it does seem like Bellingham's influence on the transfer window this summer is what is causing this inflation of certain other players' prices, like Rice, for example, who David Moyes, for some reason, thinks is an even better profile than Bellingham. And that is leading things into a very, very difficult position for Arsenal. But hopefully it resolves. You can resolve your safety and security issues online by using NordVPN, of course, which also you can get a significant discount off the service by going to nordvpn.com/Gooner. NordVPN, the fantastic service that enables you the superpower of changing your geolocation whilst on your tablet, your phone, or your laptop. Not only gives you that ability, but as I've mentioned already and before, gives you that security to keep the peeping top bowlies away, of course, from looking at any potential transfer targets that you might want to see join Arsenal in the summer. If you happen to be Australia and you want to be looking at things that are only available in the UK, you can use NordVPN for that. Whatever you want to do online, you can keep yourself safe and secure and private by using a VPN service, and I suggest using NordVPN for all of those needs. Not only that, but of course, the continuation of the prize that you can win, the Thierry Henry signed shirt, framed and mounted with a television screen playing some of the players' best moments in an Arsenal shirt, is available with the link in the description. The early bird price has unfortunately run out at this stage. It is $4.95 a ticket for UK listeners only. And there are some instant win prizes as well, including a Tony Adams signed and custom framed Arsenal home shirt, a £25 club shop voucher at Arsenal, 2 of those, in fact, and plenty of football prizes, site credit as well. Okay, let's go to part 2. Your questions, your thoughts, theories, and queries right after this. Now, a brief announcement. Of course, we told you that last month we raised £1,500 across the channel to help go into the Arsenal Vision's Arsenal Foundation Fund, and 50% of the profit we make from the merchandise, the hats that we sell, of which you can see I'm wearing one of them, and you can see in our YouTube store, link down in the description. 50% goes to the Arsenal Foundation. The other 50% that we make, of course, goes into Cancer Macmillan. So £590 that we raised fantastically. So proud that we were able to raise this amount of money to go to a amazing cause, meaning that across the whole of the month that we raised, we ended up selling, I think it was something like 109 caps because we raised £1,090. So 109 caps were sold, and we raised in the end, donating over £2,000 to charity, which is amazing. Obviously, I matched a significant portion of what you raised on the Arsenal Foundation side of things, up to £500. We had other donations coming as well from listeners to boost that up to £1,500, but then £590, the remaining profit that we made from the sale of the merchandise in the first quarter, has gone to Cancer Macmillan, of course, in memory of our good friend of the channel, Vinny. I spoke to Vinny's wife yesterday and told her about the amazing news, of which she was very grateful for, and thanks all of you guys for all of the support that you bring, and may be aware of some other charities that perhaps we can also help support that are really helped Vinny during his trials, suffering with the disease. So thank you to everybody that's continued to help support the channel, and we will continue to do so. This community never fails to amaze me. Right, let's jump into the chat box and take some of your questions then. Let's go to Ashish, who says, "Hey, Tom, what are your thoughts on the potential integration of players like Smith Rowe and Fabio Vieira into the Arsenal team next season, considering their plans to strengthen in the upcoming transfer window?" I think Smith Rowe kind of has to draw a line under this season for me. It's just not been a success. I think we all know that. It's just not worked out for Smith Rowe this season, which sucks. He had a significant injury and then had serious surgery and then came back, and the team is very much set for what Arteta wanted to achieve. I think that stuff has obviously, gone on behind the scenes. I don't know this for sure, but I think we're kind of piecing things together, and it seems that is the case. And certainly words from Arteta's, I think, hinted towards that. And if he can just draw a line under this season, get back fully focused and ready for the brand new campaign, have a good, strong pre-season, and come into the side ready and raring to go, I think we'll see the best of Smith Rowe so far. Vieira is a different kind of kettle of fish altogether because he's played games and he's had enough opportunities to show what he's capable of. Not enough opportunities to establish himself or getting up any kind of rhythm, but certainly give us an opportunity to see what he's about. We all know that there are some question marks over Vieira. He's not played enough, I think, to make too many conclusions. And that's why I don't want to see him sold this summer. I think that he deserves another season, and I'm calling that the 2-season rule regarding Arsenal's new signings now when we sign them. That's why I would be happy to see Lokonga or Tavares move on at this point. But Vieira, I would like to see another season of him. And if we bring in another attacking player, that's life. Unfortunately, you've got to compete with those players. You've got to try and do your best to work your way into the Arsenal team and prove that you should be playing and getting as many minutes as you can. Matt says, what do we think about Edu and Arteta and what they learned from the Mudryk saga in January? And do you think that it may change our summer strategy? It's a really good question. I think that the Mudryk saga has probably highlighted that to them what they're willing to do in terms of how far they're willing to go with the investment, how far over their own valuations they're willing to go, but also a bit of a lesson to know that it's not always going to work out. Now, I don't think you can draw conclusive thoughts around Mudryk based upon what we've seen from him at Chelsea this season. I don't think that's representative of him as a player. I don't think that's representative of him of what his talent is. And I think had he moved to Arsenal, I think that I would be fairly confident in saying things would have gone better than they've gone for him at Chelsea in the chaotic season that club has had and will probably continue to have into at least the near future until they start to settle things down. I think from an Arsenal point of view, if they're going to go and spend big money, I think they need to make sure it's on a player that starts. Mudryk didn't start for us, even if he came in January. Trossard has had the potential to start for us and cost a quarter, maybe slightly more than a quarter of what Mudryk actually cost Chelsea in the end. So I think Arsenal need to learn to be a bit smarter. They can be savvier. They can make some really good deals get done for really good prices. I did a piece yesterday explaining why I think Martin Odegaard is world class and how signing him for 30 to 34 million pounds, one of the best deals that Arsenal have ever done. That type of money being invested on a player that's turned out to be as good as Martin Odegaard is an amazing bit of business. So that, I think, needs to be the focus for Arsenal, is that they can get some really good deals done for really good fees and not need to worry about investing 100 million plus on certain players. They might sometimes, as we see with Rice, but certainly not all the time. What do we think Mudryk's worth now, Steve? Obviously, I don't think he's worth as much as what Chelsea paid for him. I think he's a 40 to 50 million pound player max. But they had to pay that much to get the deal done. So you could say his market value is what Shakhtar were willing to sell and what Chelsea were willing to pay for him. But I think if you were looking purely on his level of what he's worth, I think he's a 40 to 50 million pound talent personally. Raf says, I think this is the Mudryk effect. We are going to see more clubs use the media to drive up fees of players. We saw it with Caicedo too. Brighton used Jim White at TalkSport to push their start. I don't know if that's true, Raf, at all. What I do know is that certainly the communication that goes on between intermediaries, clubs, the media, leaks, things like that are certainly used to hype prices in general and hype players in particular. Like I see, like Fabrizio Romano will tweet about a player I've never heard of, and probably most of you have never heard of. I don't know if there's a strategy behind that, whether the agents, the intermediaries have leaked that information because of that. I don't know. But certainly some players get brought up that I have never heard of before and tend never to hear of again in some cases either. Let's go to Market says, did you hear reports Smith Rowe is being trained to play in the number 8 role? I know Kaya certainly believes that to be the case, so I've no reason to believe that's not correct. But I've personally not heard that. But if that is indeed the case, it makes sense. I think we've got 2 number 8 roles, if you think about it. So left and right hand side. It's 2 positions that Smith Rowe can play. And if he can master that role, it gives him 2 positions to potentially try and be used for and get an opportunity to play in the first team. James says, do you think that Jakub Kiwior could be moulded into a second left-back, playing the more Nathan Ake-style role? I don't think he needs too much moulding, to be honest, at all, James. He actually has played left-back, not only for Spezia, but he's played it for the Poland national side. He did it in the last international break and looked good at left-back. So I don't think there's much moulding needed. I think, if anything, he can play that position. He's proving to be a little bit like, let's say, an Akanji type signing maybe for Arsenal, where he can be used in multiple positions across the back four, a little bit like Tomiyasu, if you will, but on a left-hand side. And I know that Tomiyasu can play on the left. I think Kiwior can clearly play that right centre-back role to a degree. His best position is the left centre-back role, but also can play left-back. I think Arteta has been very attuned to trying to bring in players that can play and cover multiple positions. And I think that Kiwior in the last 2 games is certainly proving that he can do that. Baldev says, I thought we protected Granit Xhaka's value when he got his last contract extension. What is that value? It protected the value to a certain degree, but he still only has a year plus an option for a further year at the end of this deal. It extended it beyond the current season. So it would have run out this summer, to my understanding, and he would have gone on a free. But Arsenal protected that value so that they could get a fee if they were to sell him in this or potentially next summer if they activated the option in his deal. So that value, as I've said, it's tricky to kind of value or work out what the value of Xhaka would be. You would hope to be able to get double-digit figures for him. Anything less than that, I think, would be significantly underselling him and not worth it in terms of letting him go. Vanna Duty says, would Tammy Abraham be a good addition if we lose Flo or Eddie? I think there are targets out there that we should be looking to invest in. I'm always keen to say that, look, Tammy Abraham's a good player. But when you invest in a player, you're not only investing money, you're investing in a slot in the squad. Like, you are investing in someone that takes up a spot. And if you were to take that spot up with Tammy Abraham, that spot is then filled for the foreseeable future. You've got to get that signing right to take Arsenal to the next level. And I'm not sure that Tammy Abraham progresses us. In the same way that I'm not sure that Ivan Toney progresses us enough with the age profile and everything surrounding him in the context of the team that he plays for right now. I'm not sure he's the right profile, the same as I'm not sure that Tammy Abraham is either. I think there are other strikers out there. If Arsenal want to invest big, they should be looking to try and do, whether that's a Kolo Muani, for instance, who is certainly up there amongst my big targets, or a Gonzalo Ramos. These are the types of players that I think, beyond an Osimhen, Arsenal should be looking to try and invest in. Ditcher says, hey, Tom, if we get Rice, whom do you think we'll see replace Xhaka? And will he be a big part of our squad from the get-go? I think if Rice was to come in, there's still a chance that we see Xhaka play. I think Rice can play instead of Partey. I think he can play instead of Xhaka. He can play with either of those 2 players as well. His versatility to play the 6 or I think the 8 role, with his proving this level of technical ability that maybe some people didn't think that he had. So we don't necessarily have to let Xhaka go if we sign Rice, and I personally wouldn't. The only way that I would allow Xhaka to leave is if we were to sign another midfielder on top of Rice, be that a Caicedo or somebody, that would allow me to be more amenable to allowing Xhaka to leave. But based upon just Rice coming in, I don't think there's enough there to justify it. Let's go to Omar says, can Everton do us a favour on Sunday against City after their thrashing of Brighton? I hope so. They beat Brighton 5-1 with just 22% possession. You're going to have around that, if not less, against City. So you've got to have hope. And that's all we can have, is we can just have hope that maybe Everton can do us a big favour when they play Manchester City. Let's scroll down the chat box a little bit more. Maximia says, hey, Tom, following up on your previous observations, do you think that reporters' popularity is used to drive up the market price? If so, where do we draw the line between ITKs and believable info? ITKs we've talked about a lot on the channel in the past. I think that certainly leaks happen in order to raise the profile of players. I certainly believe that to be the case. ITKs are a different kettle of fish. People that really thrive on creating a buzz about their profiles because they might have sometimes they might have a bit of inside knowledge. it's not only media and reporters that have links into clubs. Anyone could have a link if they got a friend of a friend, or a friend who's an agent, or a friend or a brother or a sibling that's in the business. That's what sometimes creates ITKs. But I think what I don't ever understand on the ITK front is why anyone would want to do it. I really don't get the appeal or the attraction, because there's no reward. There's really no reward. And I talk to people that have acted like ITKs and ask them what on earth they think the benefit of it is to them. Because when I speak to them, all they tell me is that no one thanks them, or the minority are the ones that thank them. The majority are just people or bots just saying, what's next? What else do you know? What about this player? What about that player? And that's why, from my perspective, working in this industry, I have no interest in being a transfer journalist. I really don't have that much interest in being in the sense of having the inside knowledge on who Arsenal might sign. If I get a bit of information, like I did say with the Tielemans situation in the summer, where I reported that Arsenal were willing to wait to sign him on a free, and that's why we didn't go for him last summer, and I reported that relatively early on, I think that's not too big. But I'm not keen on doing that type of reporting, because it's not rewarding in any way, shape or form. And I'd much rather have a far greater understanding of the club that I follow, being Arsenal, the ongoings inside the club, like this Ramsdale situation, for instance, speaking about contracts with Saliba and Saka, who I've said to you guys on numerous occasions that I'm very comfortable with their situations right now. I have no reason to be concerned at this moment in time about Saka and Saliba's futures. I'd much rather be Arsenal focused than externally trying to find out who on earth could be next or who's on the radar, because it's such an unrewarding place and it's really toxic, the transfer window. I love talking about transfer targets. I love breaking them down. I love learning about who we might sign, but the actual process of trying to get the inside knowledge, it's not for me. It's just not for me. So if you're coming here for some inside information on who Arsenal might sign, I'll give my opinion on things. And if in the rare occasion that I get a little bit of information that I'm more than comfortable to talk about, I will. But, you ain't getting a Fabrizio roundup from me. Fair play to Fab. I don't know how he does it and continues to do it, but he must never sleep. Must never sleep. And it must be in some ways a bit of a tiresome task. So yeah, that's my thoughts. Yep, the rant corner is back. Certainly ranting. I don't mind a little rant. I feel like that wasn't really a rant. I feel like that was just a monologue of discussion around that topic. Marcus says, is there an Arsenal way today? I'm off today, but that doesn't mean that there isn't an Arsenal way. Maybe Umar and Charlie might be doing it together. I don't know, but I'm off today, so I won't be on it. But make sure you check on there at 10 a.m. to see if there is indeed a show. So hopefully there is one for you guys to tune in for. Gurish says, Tom, what's your thoughts on Orban and Dominic Szoboszlai for this summer? Wow, that's the first time I've been asked about Szoboszlai. It's been a long time since talking about him. He's done a much better season, to be fair. He has kind of fallen out of my sphere of, not going to say sphere of influence, then not like I had any influence on Szoboszlai, but sphere of kind of watching. My focus is so much on Arsenal these days that my ability to watch football outside of Arsenal was diminished to the point where I'm now when we're linked to players, I spend a couple of hours on Y-Scout looking through, highlights and clips and matches specifically to find out a better understanding of them. But Szoboszlai, 4 goals, 8 assists in the Bundesliga this season. 42 appearances across all competitions, 7 goals, 13 assists. He's done all right. He's still a good player. Now 22 years of age, turning 23 in October. Still a good player. I'm not sure it's the player that I want Arsenal to go for. I would have signed him prior to us signing Fabio Vieira. Would I swap Fabio Vieira for him? Absolutely. He's a very good player still, but not a player that I think is on Arsenal's radar at the moment. Maybe that will change. Things change very quickly. Let's go to Wesbird says, my husband says that I do it all the time. No, that's just me nagging because he doesn't listen. I think my wife would attest to the same sort of thing. Nigel says, Tom, what's your tea time today? 4 o'clock. playing a late one in the afternoon, only a long 9, but it's getting better. I got my personal best at the pitch and putt in the 18, got myself a score of 72, which I was very happy with. And I bested my score in an 18 last week, got 105. I want to break 100. You know, I've only been playing since December, and I'm 6 shots away from breaking 100 now, which is got to be the target for a beginner, just getting into things. You know, I saw something like a stat like there's more chance of you getting struck by lightning than there is of you breaking 90 in an 18 round of golf. I don't know if that's true. A friend of mine I play with has got his score down to something like 4 under, or 3 under, or 4 under at one of the courses round by us. He's in the 60s, so he must have been hit by lightning a few times, is all I can think when I hear things like that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Esav says, Tom, what do you think about getting Cancelo and moving Zinchenko into midfield? I think that with Cancelo, he will likely sign permanently at Bayern, so that will make it difficult. They have an option, of course, to make that deal permanent. Would I like him at Arsenal? Yeah, he's a fantastic player. Yeah, I think I'd be mad to say that I wouldn't be interested in seeing him join at Arsenal, because I think he could cover both the right back and the left back roles. He would give us something different. If there was an option to be able to get Cancelo, then sure, I would absolutely go and get a player of that level of quality. I just don't think that it's gonna happen. I don't think that's a realistic one. Gundogan, on the other hand, you know, there's been some whispers. I didn't really include it in my slideshow because I've not seen enough of them being legit. But Cancelo, there's been some whispers. I've seen reports circulating yesterday that Arsenal will be interested in signing him on a free. If we let Xhaka go, and it's only if we let Xhaka go, I don't think that's a bad player to sign on an 18-month deal, you know, with Rice as well. So you bring in Rice and Gundogan to replace Xhaka. I think that's a great potential midfield, and then you can obviously replace Gundogan with a better option if one becomes available in a future window. Would I prefer Caicedo? Of course, but you know, Gundogan would be a great addition to the squad for a season or two, alongside a Declan Rice. You know, we've got a young squad, we've got some young players. There's not necessarily pressure on Arsenal only signing young players in the midfield. I think in the forward line, that's where there's more pressure. But in the midfield and the defence, actually, as well, I don't think there's the same level of pressure to make sure that we just sign young players. So a Gundogan, I would be very, very open to seeing join Arsenal for a year or two. Yeah, I agree with Ethan. Probably the perfect replacement if Xhaka was to go. His injury record is concerning. Does have these back issues that do come forward. But I think if you have Rice and Gundogan and you add that to Partey and Jorginho, and obviously, who else have we got in the midfield that can play there? Vieira, Smith Rowe, El Nene's still there, you know, depending on what happened with Lokonga. So I think Patino will go. But yeah, I think Gundogan would be a great replacement for Xhaka if he was to go. I don't think that changes things too much whatsoever. PG says, I don't want City sloppy seconds. Oh, I mean, arguably, it's a really disrespectful way to talk about Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko, who have elevated this team into a position where it's competing now for a title. I think very, very harsh indeed. I don't buy into the whole City reject thing. I think that's ludicrous, really, considering what the two players we've signed from City have enabled us to do this year and come very, very close. If not maybe as close as we need it to, depending on what happens in the last 3 to 4 games. We'll wait and see. But I don't think you should. It's naive, is the way I would describe it. It's naive to describe City's cast-offs or the players City are willing to move on from as sloppy seconds. Very naive indeed, considering what we've done this season with 2 very good ones. King says, Tom, Caicedo being able to play right back at DM, centre mid, etc. Does that make him even a better option, as he could play the Zinchenko role on the right-hand side? I've not seen him play at right back. I mean, I might be wrong. I've not seen it happen. I don't think I look at him as the Zinchenko type player. I think I look at him as the box-to-box midfielder that would add a lot of technical ability, a lot of progression into the Arsenal team, a lot of energy and dynamism into the Arsenal midfield. That's what I'd love to see. Caicedo move in, that would be great. Ardi says Leao over Osimhen. I mean, Leao is more of a left-sided wide forward. I know he can play centre forward as well, but Osimhen's certainly a number 9. Rafael Leao looked far more so as a left-sided wide forward. But I would be very open to seeing Leao join Arsenal. I think he's a fantastic player and certainly would add quality to the forward line. That is beyond any doubt. That's for sure. Let's go to Benji says, Tom, what are your thoughts on where Marquinhos goes on loan next? Also, what to do with Austin Trusty? I'm sure he can fetch more than what I've seen online. Yeah, I'll tackle the second part first. It's really bugging me seeing those stories about 2 million quid for Austin Trusty. I've not actually reported it on my slides because I have a lot of doubt about it. It might be true, and I don't tend to report stories unless I'm comfortable reporting them. And if I do report them and I'm not comfortable talking about it, I tell you, hence why I say to get your salt shakers out if need be. But some stories, I'm just like, I'm not even going to include that because I just can't quite fathom it. Like the report suggesting that Arsenal would be willing to sell him for 2 million quid when they signed him for, I think, my understanding was they signed him for about £1.5 million. It might be slightly more than that. I mean, what did Transfermarkt suggest that we signed him for? They say we signed him for about €2 million, apparently. So yeah, £1.5 million was my understanding of what we signed him for. 2 million quid after a season where he's done really well in the Championship is just no. Like, you should be getting close to 10 million, I think, for someone like Austin Trusty. Of his age, he's a good age. He's now played at the Championship. He's an American full international now as well. If it's a 2 million loan fee, Paul, that's fine. If that's the case and it's a loan fee, sure, that makes sense. If you want to sign Trusty for a season on loan for 2 million, I don't have too much of a problem with that. It could raise his level even more. If he goes to someone like Rangers, has been suggested, maybe you get some time in Europe. How much did Bassey leave Rangers for? Calvin Bassey, who went to Ajax. Let me have a quick check on that. So I think that's a good example of like a young player going to Rangers, and then so he was at Leicester's under 21s, and he signed for Rangers in 2020. Played 2 seasons at Rangers, including European football. Rangers getting to that Europa League final, if you remember, and Calvin Bassey started. He then left for €23 million. So if someone like Calvin Bassey is able to do that, I don't see why Arsenal would also not want to see a significant profit on a player like Austin Trusty. Is Austin Trusty as good as Calvin Bassey? Not yet. No, I don't think so. And he's a bit older than Calvin Bassey, actually. I think Trusty's something like, 24 now? Maybe 25? Let me have a quick check. He's 24. He turns 25 in August. So I think Arsenal looking for upwards of £10 million is not an unfair estimation on Trusty. What was the first part of the question? I feel like I completely skipped the first part. I've now lost it. Here it is, Marquinhos and where he goes on loan next. I'm quite unsure on Marquinhos. I'm not sure that his future is necessarily going to be at Arsenal. I think he'll be someone that Arsenal try and get a profit for. He didn't do amazing things at Norwich. Norwich aren't a great team this season. They've had some struggles. Scored an assist on his debut, but didn't really do anything after that. I think that you're looking to try and get him to a Premier League team if you can. If not, go to La Liga or another top flight league in Europe. That's where you've got to try and get him to. But yeah, I think he needs another season on loan, and then we can assess in the summer of 2024. I think I'm going to wrap things up there. I've been going for nearly 40 minutes now, which is a longer show than I usually do. So thank you to everybody for tuning in. Really appreciate your time as always. Do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. It takes just a second and it really does help us out. Again, thank you to everybody that's helped continue to donate to our causes by buying our TGT merchandise. They should be back in stock. I'm hoping that we are indeed back in stock. I know that there was some people suggesting that they'd gone out of stock yesterday. I'm hoping that that's not the case. Let me just have a quick check if I can actually even check. Here we go. It says they are currently in stock. Yes, you can. You can now get hold of the hats. I know they were out of stock yesterday, but they should be back in stock now. Link down in the description. So go and get them. They help support some great causes, and it's all non-profit, so nothing goes to me. Any money we make from these goes to help the Arsenal Foundation and Cancer Macmillan support. So get involved, sport some TGT headgear, and help some great charities. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. I really appreciate your time, and I'll see you tomorrow morning for the next show. And yeah, stay safe, stay well, have a fantastic Wednesday, and as always, up the Arsenal.